The fall and the arrival. The skies over Talora burned crimson as another orbital bombardment tore through the atmosphere. Commander Vexlar stood at the edge of a crumbling balcony, his four eyes narrowed against the acrid smoke. The crystalline spires of the capital city, once the pride of the Talorian Confederation, now lay in ruins, shattered like the hopes of his people. The Mrekka had come without warning 3 cycles ago. First, their diplomats with honeyed words and false promises. Then their infiltrators who poisoned the defense grid. Finally, their warships that blackened the skies and rained destruction upon a civilization unprepared for such brutality. Commander, called Nari, his second in command. Her usual azure skin had paled to a sickly white, and one of her arm fronds hung limp and scared. The eastern perimeter has fallen. The Mrekka ground forces will be here within the hour. Vexlar nodded silently. They both knew what that meant. The capital was the last major Talorian stronghold. Once it fell, their civilization would join the dozen others the Mrekka had consumed in their relentless expansion across the sector. "How many fighters remain?" he asked, already dreading the answer. 43, Nari replied. Most barely trained. The professional military units were decimated in the initial attack. The Talorians had never been warriors. They were scholars, artists, and engineers who had transformed their harsh world into a garden of technological marvels. Their defensive capabilities had been designed to deter pirates and raiders, not to withstand the full might of the most aggressive species in the known galaxy. "We make our stand here," Vexlar decided, gesturing to the Grand Archive Plaza. "If we're to join our ancestors, let it be protecting what remains of our history." The remaining Talorian fighters took positions among the rubble of what had once been their civilization's greatest repository of knowledge. Makeshift barricades of fallen masonry and twisted metal offered meager protection. Most were armed with nothing more than civilian energy cutters repurposed as weapons. As the sun began to set, the distinctive heavy clank of Mrekka warwalkers echoed through the empty streets. Vexlar tightened his grip on the ceremonial staff that was now his only weapon. It had been meant for academic processions, not battle. "Stand ready," he called, his voice steady despite the fear gripping his hearts. "Make every shot count." The first Mrekka appeared at the far end of the plaza, massive, armored figures with multiple limbs ending in weapons or serrated claws. Their exoskeletons gleamed dully in the fading light, adorned with trophies from previous conquests. Behind them came their war machines, towering metal monstrosities that shook the ground with each step. One of the younger Talorians fired prematurely, a wild shot that glanced harmlessly off Mrekka's armor. The invaders responded immediately, a barrage of plasma fire that reduced the left flank of defenders to ash in seconds. This was it, Vexlar realized. The end of everything his people had built over thousands of years. He raised his staff, prepared to charge forward in one final, futile gesture of defiance. And then the sky changed. A sonic boom cracked across the battlefield, so powerful it staggered even the hulking Mrekka. All eyes turned upward as a formation of sleek, black ships punched through the atmosphere, moving with impossible speed and precision. "Are those more Mrekka?" Nari whispered, confusion evident in her voice. "No," Vexlar replied, equally bewildered. "Their design is nothing like I've seen before." The unknown vessels swept low over the plaza, and suddenly the air was filled with explosive ordnance that fell upon the Mrekka with devastating accuracy. Warwalkers exploded, infantry scattered, and for the first time since the invasion began, the Mrekka were retreating. One of the black ships landed in the center of the plaza, its engines cooling with a subsonic hum. The Talorians watched in stunned silence as a hatch opened and figures began to emerge. They were Bikdal, shorter than the Mrekka, but taller than Talorians. Their armor was functional rather than ceremonial, with no trophies or embellishments. Each carried weapons that looked purposefully designed rather than the organic mechanical hybrid technology of the Mrekka. The lead figure approached Vexlar and removed its helmet, revealing a face with two eyes, a flat nose, and skin in various shades of brown. Recognition dawned on Vexlar. He had seen images of this species in the Xenobiology archives. "Commander Vexlar," the being asked in perfect Tellurian, the translation device at its throat barely visible. "I'm Captain Sarah Chen, 7th Fleet, Earth Defense Force. We received your distress signal. Sorry we're late." "You're humans," Vexlar stated, still processing the impossible turn of events. Captain Chen nodded, her expression grim yet somehow reassuring. "We've had our own encounters with the Mreka. We thought your people might appreciate some assistance." Before Vexlar could respond, a warning shout came from one of the human soldiers. A massive Mreka war machine had emerged from a side street, its weapons powering up for a devastating strike. Chen didn't hesitate. "Harper, Jackson, anti-armor protocols." Two humans shouldered launchers and fired in perfect synchronization. Twin projectiles streaked toward the war machine, impacting in a blinding flash. When Vexlar's vision cleared, the Mreka Colossus was nothing but scattered debris. "That was efficient," Nari commented, awe evident in her voice. "We've had practice," Chen replied grimly. She turned back to her troops. "Secure the perimeter. Medical team, assist the wounded. Comms, get me a direct line to Admiral Takara." The humans moved with practiced precision, setting up defensive positions, deploying equipment, and treating injured Tellurians with technology that seemed to border on miraculous. Within minutes, the plaza had been transformed from a last stand into an organized base of operations. "You've fought the Mreka before?" Vexlar asked Chen as they watched the humans work. 3 years ago, they hit one of our colony worlds," Chen explained, her expression darkening. "They thought we'd be easy prey, like the others. They were wrong." A human medic approached a severely wounded Tellurian whose arm had been severed at the shoulder. The human applied a device that immediately stopped the bleeding, then injected something that caused the injured Tellurian to sigh in relief as the pain visibly ebbed from their features. "Your people are not warriors," Chen observed, watching Vexlar's fighters. "We are scholars and builders," Vexlar admitted. "We have no standing army, no warships." The Mreka seemed unstoppable. Chen's mouth curved into what Vexlar would later learn was a smile, though there was little warmth in it. "Nothing is unstoppable, Commander. The Mreka just haven't met the right opposition yet." A series of explosions bloomed on the horizon as more human ships engaged the Mreka forces. For the first time in months, Vexlar felt something other than despair stirring in his heart. "Why would you help us?" he asked. "Our civilizations have barely had contact." "Because that's what humans do," Chen replied simply. "We stand with those who can't stand alone. And we really, really don't like bullies." Through the night, more human ships arrived, disgorging troops, equipment, and supplies. The Mreka launched 3 counterattacks, each more desperate than the last, but the combined forces of humans and Tellurians held firm. By dawn, the immediate area around the capital had been secured. Vexlar stood with Chen on a makeshift command platform, reviewing tactical displays that showed Mreka forces being systematically pushed back across the continent. "This is just the beginning," Chen cautioned. "The Mreka don't surrender easily. They'll bring reinforcements, escalate the violence. It's going to get worse before it gets better." "But it will get better?" Vexlar asked, hope creeping into his voice for the first time in months. Chen's expression hardened, determination etched into every line of her face. "The Mreka think they understand war because they understand cruelty. But humans..." She gestured to her soldiers, who moved with the confident precision of predators. "We've spent our entire history fighting. Sometimes each other, sometimes external threats. War is in our blood in a way the Mreka can't comprehend. And now they've made us angry." Vexlar watched as human dropships deployed artillery platforms that began hammering distant Mreka positions. Others set up defensive perimeters, medical stations, and communication arrays with practiced efficiency. Your distress signal reached us 6 months ago, Chen continued. We've been preparing ever since. This isn't just a rescue mission, Commander. This is the beginning of a counteroffensive. For the first time since the Mrekka invasion began, Vexlar allowed himself to believe that his civilization might survive. As the sun rose fully over the battered capital, illuminating human and Tellurian working side by side, he realized that the universe had just fundamentally changed. Humanity had arrived, and the tide had turned. The counterattack and victory. 3 days after the humans' arrival, Commander Vexlar stood in what had once been the Grand Council chamber. The elegant dome was cracked, letting in shafts of dusty sunlight, but the circular table, carved from a single piece of ancient heartwood, remained intact. Around it sat the human military leadership and what remained of Tellora's governing officials. Captain Chen pointed to a holographic display hovering above the table. The Mrekka have withdrawn to these 3 strongholds. They're consolidating their forces, probably preparing for a major counterattack. Admiral Takara, a stern-faced human with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing, nodded. Standard Mrekka doctrine. They're not used to resistance, so they default to overwhelming force. They'll bring in their heavy capital ships next. We've never seen their capital ships, one of the Tellurian ministers said, voice trembling. We have, Takara replied grimly. At the Battle of Proxima Centauri. They're planet killers. A chill silence fell over the chamber. Vexlar studied the humans' faces, noticing their expressions didn't show fear, only calculation. We won't let it come to that, Chen assured the Tellurians. We've been monitoring their communications. Their nearest reinforcement fleet is still 3 days out. That gives us time to implement our strategy. The hologram shifted, showing detailed schematics of Mrekka vessels. Vexlar was stunned by the level of intelligence the humans possessed on their enemy. You've studied them extensively, he observed. Know your enemy, a human officer quoted. After they attacked our colony, we made understanding the Mrekka our top priority. Their technology is impressive but predictable, a human scientist added. They rely heavily on intimidation rather than innovation. They haven't needed to evolve their tactics because they've never faced serious opposition. Admiral Takara stood, commanding the room's attention. The key to defeating the Mrekka isn't matching their brutality. It's exploiting their weaknesses. They're hierarchical to a fault. Their command structure depends on a small number of leaders making decisions for the many. Take out those leaders, and their forces become disorganized. The plan the humans laid out was audacious. While the main human fleet engaged the approaching Mrekka reinforcements in space, a small strike team would infiltrate the Mrekka flagship currently orbiting Tellura. The goal: capture or eliminate the Mrekka High Commander and sabotage their central command systems. It's a suicide mission, Nari objected when she heard the plan. Only if we fail, Chen replied with that unsettling human smile. 2 days later, as the Mrekka prepared their decisive assault, a small stealth craft detached from the human carrier. Inside were Captain Chen, a team of 12 specialized human operators, and, at his own insistence, Commander Vexlar. Your knowledge of Tellurian orbital infrastructure could prove crucial, Chen had conceded when he volunteered. But you follow my orders without question. Understood. The craft slipped past the Mrekka patrols using technology that seemed to bend light around its hull. Vexlar watched in fascination as the massive Mrekka flagship grew larger in the view screen, a grotesque structure of metal and what appeared to be ossified tissue, bristling with weapons. That's our entry point. Chen pointed to a maintenance hatch near what humans would call the ship's stern. According to our intelligence, it's minimally guarded. Their approach was flawless. The human pilot maneuvered with impossible precision, bringing them to the hatch without triggering any alarms. A specialized cutting tool made short work of the Mrekka security measures. Inside, the air was thick and humid, carrying a scent that reminded Vexlar of decaying vegetation. The corridors pulsed with an unsettling bioluminescence. Stay close, Chen whispered, her weapon raised. Motion sensors show minimal activity in this section. They moved silently through the twisting passageways, guided by detailed maps compiled from previous human encounters with Mreca vessels. Twice they had to hide as Mreca patrols passed, the massive aliens stomping by oblivious to the infiltrators in their midst. "They're overconfident," one of the human soldiers observed quietly. "They don't expect enemies aboard their flagship." "Pride before the fall," another responded. They reached a junction where Vexilor's knowledge became essential. "These conduits," he indicated faintly glowing tubes running along the ceiling. "They connect to the main reactor. If we follow them, they'll lead us to the command center." The team advanced cautiously. As they neared the heart of the ship, security increased. At one checkpoint, confrontation became inevitable when a Mreca guard spotted them. The humans moved with lethal efficiency. Before the guard could sound an alarm, two silent projectiles found vulnerable points in its armored carapace. The massive creature collapsed without a sound. "Their neural relay is located at the base of the neck," the human who fired explained to Vexilor. "Learned that at Proxima Centauri." Minutes later, they reached their objective. A massive chamber dominated by a pulsing crystalline structure surrounded by Mreca officers. "That's their tactical nexus," Chen whispered. "And that." She indicated a particularly large Mreca adorned with elaborate armor. "Is High Commander wreak." The plan called for planting specialized disruptors on the nexus while eliminating key personnel. Simple in theory, nearly impossible in execution. Chen divided the team into 3 groups. 2 would create diversions while the main group struck at the heart of the command center. "Remember," she told them, "speed and precision. We won't get a second chance." The diversions began with precisely timed explosions in distant parts of the ship. Alarms blared as Mreca guards rushed to respond. In the confusion, Chen's team struck. They burst into the command center, weapons firing with surgical precision. 3 Mreca officers fell before the others could react. Vexilor, armed with a human weapon he barely understood, found himself face to face with a charging Mreca. Time seemed to slow. He recalled Chen's brief training. Aim for the joints or the neck relay. His shot caught the Mreca in its chest joint, causing it to stumble. His second shot found the neural relay, dropping it permanently. Across the chamber, High Commander wreak roared commands, rallying its guards. Chen and 2 of her specialists fought their way toward the nexus, planting disruptors as they went. "Vexilor, cover the west entrance," Chen shouted over the chaos. He moved to position, marveling at how the humans functioned in combat, not as individuals but as parts of a single organism, each anticipating the other's needs without explicit communication. The battle for the command center was brutal and brief. 3 humans fell to Mreca weapons, their sacrifices buying precious seconds for the mission. Chen reached the High Commander, engaging the massive alien in direct combat. Wreak towered over the human captain, its weaponized limbs slashing with ferocious speed. But Chen moved like water, every strike flowing into a counter that exploited the Mreca's size and weight against it. "You're the first prey to reach our heart," the Mreca rumbled in its guttural language. "Your species will be remembered as we consume your worlds." "That's where you're wrong," Chen replied, ducking under a sweep that would have decapitated her. "We're not prey. We're the predators you never saw coming." Her next move was too fast for Vexilor to follow. Somehow, Chen was inside the Mreca's guard, her specialized blade finding the gap between armor plates that protected the creature's central nervous system. Wreak's massive form shuddered and collapsed. Throughout the chamber, the remaining Mreca hesitated, suddenly bereft of their leader's commands. "Disruptors planted," called one of Chen's specialists. 2 minutes to activation. "Fall back to extraction point," Chen ordered, retrieving her blade. Mission complete. Their retreat was a fighting withdrawal through corridors, now swarming with confused but dangerous Mreca forces. Twice they were nearly cut off, saved only by the humans' uncanny ability to anticipate enemy movements and prepare countermeasures. They reached their craft with seconds to spare. As they pulled away from the flagship, the disruptors activated, sending cascading failures through the Mreca command systems. From the view screen, they watched as the massive vessel's weapons powered down, its engines sputtered, and its coordinated defense fell into disarray. Throughout the Tellurian system, Mreca forces suddenly found themselves without central command. Admiral Takara. Chen reported over comms. Phase 1 complete. The head of the snake is severed. Well done, Captain, came the reply. Phase 2 is underway. The Mreca reinforcement fleet just arrived and walked straight into our trap. The space battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded history. The humans had positioned their fleet to funnel the Mreca reinforcements into a carefully prepared killing field. Without coordinated command from their flagship, the Mreca vessels fought as individuals rather than as a coherent force. For 7 hours, the battle raged across Tellora's orbital space. Human vessels danced around their larger opponents, striking with precision rather than brute force. When it ended, the Mreca fleet was in ruins. 3 days later, the Mreca signed their surrender, the first in their species' history of conquest. In the rebuilt Grand Council chamber, Admiral Takara and Commander Vexlar formalized the new alliance between their peoples. You saved us, Vexlar acknowledged. The Tellurian Confederation owes humanity a debt we can never repay. Admiral Takara shook her head. This isn't about debt. It's about standing together against threats that would consume us individually. The Mreca won't be the last expansionist power we face. Why did they fear you so much? Vexlar asked. At the end, their leaders seemed more terrified of humans than determined to win. Captain Chen, her arm in a sling from injuries sustained during the mission, answered, because we represent their worst nightmare, prey that learned to hunt back. They understand domination through superior strength. What they don't understand is innovation, adaptation, and most importantly, sacrifice for others. Is that why you came to our aid? Because you saw yourselves in us? Partly, Takara admitted, but mostly because it was the right thing to do. Humanity's history is filled with times we stood by while atrocities happened. We've learned from those mistakes. As reconstruction began across Tellura, human and Tellurian worked side by side. The humans brought their martial knowledge, teaching the Tellurians to defend themselves. The Tellurians shared their advanced sciences, helping humans push beyond their technological limitations. 6 months after the Battle of Tellura, Commander Vexlar, now Ambassador Vexlar, stood on the observation deck of the human flagship Defiance, watching as a joint human-Tellurian fleet prepared to depart. Where will you go now? He asked Chen, who had been promoted to Commodore following the campaign. Chen's gaze was fixed on the stars beyond the view screen. There are other civilizations suffering under Mreca occupation, other peoples who sent distress calls that went unanswered for too long. We're going to find them. And then we'll do what humans have always done when faced with bullies, she replied, that now familiar determined smile appearing. We'll stand up, fight back, and teach others to do the same. As the fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, Vexlar reflected on how quickly the universe had changed. For millennia, peaceful civilizations had lived in fear of predatory species like the Mreca. No one had dared to challenge the established order. But humanity had arrived, and with them came something the galaxy had never seen before: predators who protected instead of hunted, warriors who fought for peace, and a species whose greatest strength wasn't their technology or their ferocity, but their unbreakable determination to stand against tyranny wherever they found it. The tide had turned indeed, and the galaxy would never be the same.